It's only the beginning of September, but fall knitting is well underway. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 36 of the Knitted by Whitney podcast. I'm in the same place that I filmed my fall knitting plans video, and I think I'm going to have better luck today with getting accurate images of my yarn and everything because it's an overcast day today. So I've got lots of bright light coming in from this window. I've got my little bit of greenery, but I don't have bright sunlight coming in, and I'm not necessarily as backlit as I was last time. So hopefully this will work out a little bit better. I tried another filming location before this and it just didn't feel right. And then when I sat down here to try this one out, this one felt right. So hopefully this will work out today. In today's episode, I have one finished object to share, 3 whips, a couple of stash spotlight yarns, and 2 book reviews. And if I have a bit of time after all of that, I do want to add my 2 cents to a topic that's been going around in the knitting YouTube community. So hopefully I have time to get to that. If you haven't already guessed, what I'm wearing is my finished object. This is my Firth sweater by Rebecca Clow of the Crayabea. And I'm so happy with this sweater. I'm not going to keep it on for the duration of the podcast just because it's kind of hot and humid today and the wool and mohair is feeling a little warm, but I did want to wear it for at least the beginning of the podcast to show it off. I will, of course, insert pictures like I normally do to really give you a good idea of it because you don't see very much of it when I am sitting down. But this is my completed Firth sweater, and I am in love with it. I'm so happy with it. I definitely want to make another one. However, I want my next version to just be a vest, which is very simple to do because this is a set-in sleeve sweater. And I remember when I tried it on before I had finished the sleeves, I thought, I love this as a vest. I'm not the only one who thought that because a couple of us in the test group expressed interest in knitting the pattern again, but as a vest, and one of the testers ended up doing her version as a vest. Now, unfortunately, she chose to do it as a vest because she had dye-lot issues with her yarn. Otherwise, she would have had a completed sweater with sleeves, but it looks fabulous as a vest, and I love that she was able to showcase that in her final object photos so that you could get an idea of what it would look like as a vest. So I definitely want to make another one as a vest. I have some yarn picked out for that. And I think I would like to make another one in fingering weight without a mohair. Because as much as I love my fuzzy mohair version, I think this pattern really stands out best with non-fuzzy yarn because you can really see the texture of these rib stitch detailing, the rib stitch detail that goes into the underarm section of the body. And I love how cozy my version is, and I chose to use this yarn because it's very special to me. I picked it up from This Is Knit in Dublin on my way back from Portugal when we took our honeymoon last year. The yarn is Townhouse Yarns Fade Street 4-ply, which is a single ply fingering weight yarn, and Abbey Lace, which is their mohair base, both in the color Smoke and Mirrors. I love this color. It's a beautiful purple. It's like a smoky purple, almost gray purple. So in some pictures it does appear gray, in some it does appear purple, but it is kind of a grayish purple, purplish gray, one of the two. But as much as I love it, I do really want a version without mohair because I think that the texture looks really crisp and clean without fuzzy yarn. So that's my plans, my future plans for making this sweater. Not anytime soon. Definitely not anytime soon. I just have far too much on my plate, but I like to have these plans in my head so that I can look at my stash yarns and see what will work for them. I have a couple choices that I might look at using, but no immediate yarn plans for a fingering weight version, just a DK weight vest version. What I love the most about this sweater is the impeccable fit. And that's not just down to the set-in sleeve, which I do think fits my body best. It's also down to the bust shaping of this sweater. This pattern comes with 3 bust shaping options. The first one is no bust shaping, and then there is a D cup and an F cup. And there's a section in the pattern that will help you decide which of those bust shaping options that you should do. And because this sweater is quite fitted, you really do want to use bust shaping if that is something that your size and shape requires, just because it will help you get that absolute perfect fit. Speaking of absolute perfect fit, I absolutely love the sleeves on this sweater. These are the best fitting sleeves that I have ever knit. They are snug to my arm without being too tight, and they are not at all too loose. That cuff flares out a little bit, but that's just because of the stretchy bind off that I do and the fact that I pull at my sleeves to hold them over my hands sometimes. So I've been fiddling with them, so that's why they flare out a little bit, but otherwise they would be tight to my wrist. But this is the first time that I have knit the sleeves of a sweater where they have been a perfect fit from shoulder to wrist. It is unbelievable how great this fit is, and it's just remarkable to me, and I'm so happy about it because oftentimes, because I have large biceps, I will usually have sleeves that are too tight up at the top, or they'll be too loose by the time they get to the wrist, and I'll have to do even more decreases just because of the ratio from my bicep down to my wrist. And especially because I really wanted this to be a nicely fitted sweater, it's wonderful to see that the sleeves are just as nicely fitted as the body, so absolutely love that about this pattern. And probably my favorite detail of this pattern is the ribbed detail. So it is, of course, along the arm here down to the underarm where it builds out in this really cool design. And then you have your 2x2 rib on your sleeves, on your folded neckline, as well as on your hem. And this sweater has really convinced me. I was already kind of aware of it, but it has completely convinced me now that I think 2x2 rib is superior to 1x1 rib. That might be a controversial opinion. That might be a hot take. I don't know. I just think it looks crisp, clean, intentional. I find with 1x1 rib, it can often look kind of wibbly wobbly until you block it. And even then you have to be really, you pay a lot of attention when you're blocking that. But I find, oh, there's some sunlight coming in now. But I find that 2x2 rib always looks really good, really classy, and I'm going to be using that more in my future sweater patterns. Okay, I feel like my skin can breathe a little bit better now that I'm not covered in mohair and I'm a little bit cooler, so it should be easy getting through the rest of my whips. Now, if you've watched my fall knitting plans video, you know that I have some projects that I really wanted to work on in the fall. I've got one that has a little bit of a deadline, so you can probably guess what I'm going to show you for my whips, but let's get into them. First off, I am working on my Tulsta tee. Now, if you've been here for the last podcast episode and/or for my fall knitting plans video, you'll know that this used to be a Tulsta tank, but it is now a Tulsta tee, and I've made some decent progress on it. So the last time I showed this, I had only done the ribbed neckline and the short rows. I have now completed the first set of yoke increases. It is a top-down raglan, and so far I've just done the initial set of raglan increases. You can tell that my neckline is quite wide. I am a little concerned about that. I do know that that is one of the critiques of the pattern, is that the neckline is quite wide, but I'm thinking that if it ends up still being too wide, when I'm finished the whole t-shirt, I'm just going to put some elastic thread in that ribbed neckline and sort of cinch it in a bit. But in general, I don't mind. I do like a little bit of a wider neckline. I don't like anything too tight to my neck, which is my problem with my first Tulsa tee that I made, where I added the lace yoke of the Lorette sweater, and it's far too high. It's almost like a mock neck, and I'm really uncomfortable in it. So I'm going to finish this off and then decide if I want to bring in the neckline with some elastic. But right now, I think it's kind of a nice, like just a wide casual neckline. I am really hoping to finish this in the fall. That's one of my fall goals, and I think I'm well on my way. I almost forgot. The yarn for this project is Loops and Threads Silky Soft in the color Cobalt. And I am absolutely loving this kind of Grecian blue. It's so pretty. My next whip is one that I was hoping I would cast on this fall. I don't think I expected to cast it on so early because I do have things that I need to get done this particular season. But last weekend, Doyle and I went on a camping trip, and on my way out the door, I last minute grabbed the yarn, the needles, and the pattern for this project. And I casted it on while we were camping, and it just flew. So it might not look like very much, but it is a little bit of a tricky start. So I'm actually quite proud of this progress. This is the Oxford sweater by Tricot Design MCL, Marie-Christine Levesque. If you've been here for a little while, you'll know she's one of my favorite pattern designers, and I have knit her romance cardigan before. I knit one for my wedding, and I also knit one for my maid of honor, and then I knit one for myself last year that was more of a casual cardigan, but I have been wanting to make myself a mustard yellow cardigan. Although ironically, the yarns that I'm using for this are not mustard yellow, they are curry yellow. I'm using 2 alpaca yarns for this project held together. I have Drops Brushed Alpaca Silk in the color Curry, and I have Filcolana Alva, also in the color Curry. So these are really fun, really bright, punchy, golden curry yellows, and I am absolutely loving the drape of this fabric. It is nice and squishy. It does have great flow to it, but because the brushed alpaca silk is quite a thicker, fuzzy yarn, it's filling in the gaps of those stitches so well. So even though I am getting a nice loose gauge, I think it's a 20 stitch gauge, it's not looking gapey at all because of the fibers of that brushed alpaca silk filling in those gaps. This is a really interesting construction of a sweater. It's one that I was aware of, but I have not done myself before. I believe it is contiguous. I've done a contiguous in the round before, but this is my first time doing contiguous as a cardigan. And it's not exactly the same to how I did the in the round contiguous. That's my Augustine's number 21 sweater dress, also in the same color actually. That one was a contiguous in the round construction, and this one is slightly different. But I do want to give you an idea. It's backlit. That's hard to see. Maybe if I hold it over here with my hand behind. Ugh, I should have known that this would not be a good podcasting location. I will put in a picture if it was not very visible on the screen. But the way that this is started is you cast on and knit down in a trapezoid shape for the back panel. Then you put those stitches on hold down here. You pick up along the trapezoid edge and you knit a panel, just like a small rectangular panel. Put those stitches on hold. Go back and pick up the other side of the trapezoid and knit that little panel. And then you keep those stitches live. Pick up the side of that panel that you were knitting. pick up those stitches that you put on hold for the back piece, pick up the side of the other panel, and then pick up the stitches that you had put on hold. So it's in this strange horseshoe shape. It's a very strange looking shape, and I know once I start to knit the rest of this sweater, it's going to make more sense and it's going to look much more like a cardigan. So this pattern was actually very kindly gifted to me by my friend Emily of the Emily Knits podcast. And she was so excited about the construction of this pattern that she ended up buying herself a copy as well. So now we are kind of buddy knitting this pattern. I think she's at about the same spot as me. I'm hopeful that I can continue to work on this one a little bit, but I have to put it on pause for a very short while I work on whip number 3. In my fall knitting plans video, I talked about how my cousin recently had her second baby and I wanted to knit something for them. And I showed off this Red Door Fiber Studios Tweedy yarn. And I also showed a picture of another color of the same yarn. So these are both from Kate's Akatar collection. The red is Curse Breaker and the blue is Truth Teller. So this was Farah's tonal colorway and this was Azriel's tonal colorway. And I had intended to just use the red, but then I started looking at baby patterns and I was looking at the size that I needed to make for them. And I was always just shy of the amount that I needed for whatever size I was making if I was just using the red. So I thought I'm going to be kind to myself, not make myself play yarn chicken. I decided to use both colors together and I chose a striped baby pattern. I am making the Baby Messenger Henley, which I have made some pretty significant progress on. I'm just about to split for the body and the sleeves, and it's looking so cute. Isn't this adorable? The colors aren't really coming across because of the backlighting behind me, but the blue and the red are just so cute together. I have decided to use the blue as the main color and the red as the contrasting color just because I liked the idea, even though they're very similar tone. If I hold them up again, if I did a black and white photo of these yarns, they would essentially be the exact same tone. But just looking at them color-wise, the red looks lighter than the blue, and I tend to like stripe patterns where the lighter color is the stripe and the darker color is the main color. So that's the only reason why I decided to use the blue as the main and the red as the contrasting stripe. But I'm super excited about this pattern. I worked on it a lot this past weekend. I was away on a mother-daughter trip with my mom, and anytime that we were just relaxing, I was working on this pattern. So I did get quite a lot of it done. I got the whole yoke done. And the cool thing about this pattern is the striping is along the yoke where it is the Henley part. And then the rest of the body is knit in one color, your main color, which is the same as your ribbing. And the striping continues down the sleeves, which I think is so cute. It's definitely different than what I normally see in sweater patterns. Normally the striping is all over, or it's just in one section, or it's just on the body. So it's different to see it only on the yoke and the sleeves. And that's what kind of attracted to me about the Henley, the Baby Messenger Henley pattern. I'm not on gauge with this pattern. I didn't realize until after I'd purchased it that the pattern is for a sport weight and I'm using DK weight. And I really couldn't meet the gauge of the sport weight without this feeling like a burlap sack because it would be so stiff. So I've decided to just go with the gauge that I get. I am knitting the smallest size of the pattern, which I do believe is a 0 to 3 month size, but this is definitely going to be bigger than that. This is going to be closer to 6 to 12 months, which is great because that's typically what I knit whenever I make a baby outfit, so that it's not only for when the baby is first born. They can wear it for a little bit longer because babies are always put in clothes that are too big for them. They can't fit into clothes that are too small for them. So I'm really happy with this so far. I think it's going to be a really, really cute pattern. So now let's take a look at some stash spotlight yarns. And I have kept the bag that these were shipped in simply because I love the bag so much. It has a rose print all over it. Of course, I'm trying, like this side doesn't have my address or anything, but the other side does. So I'm only showing you this back side. But this lovely packaging came from Selena of Through the Wardrobe Yarn Co. And I bought these yarns back in the spring, maybe May or June. So maybe even the summer, but I bought them because she was having a mohair yarn sale. She had quite a lot of mohair in her in-stock yarn and she wanted to get it out, so she had a 40% off her mohair base sale, and I picked up 2 mohair yarns that were the same color and 2 non-mohair yarns that I'm going to use all together. So hopefully you can see how beautiful these yarns are. I think they're coming across okay. They are backlit, but of course, like I said, if nothing shows up very well, I will put photos in as well. So I purchased these from her in-stock yarn, but they are from her Bridgerton collection, which I'm still kicking myself about not buying yarn from. So if she ever brings it back, I will purchase some of it, especially on her silky base. Oh, the colors are so stunning on merino silk. But I did not get a chance to buy them at the time. Either I was too late till I missed like the cutoff time for the ordering, or maybe I just didn't have the disposable income at the time to buy any. So I was not able to buy at the time, but I was lucky enough to get some of my favorite colors from that collection from her in-stock yarn. So the 2 mohairs are the same color. They are I Have Always Been Yours, and they are this really beautiful lavender pinky purple. And then the 2 sock yarns that I got, which I was hopeful that I would get 2 of the same color. I was not that lucky. None of the Bridgerton colors that worked with the mohair had more than 1 skein available. So I bought one of them on her High Fantasy base, which is Superwash Merino. And this is Diamond of the First Water. So this is Daphne's color, naturally. And then the other one is her Romantasy sock. And this one is I Burn for You. Naturally, it is the Duke's color. And this one is 75/25 merino nylon. I think this one is my absolute favorite color from the Bridgerton collection. And I have a really fun pattern that I'm going to do with these yarns. Claire Jackson of Perfectly Knotted has the most beautiful shawl pattern. It is the Duology shawl, I believe is the name. But it is a shawl that uses 2 skeins of sock yarn and 2 skeins of either merino or Surrey, where you hold them together, one of each, and you knit from one tip to the center with one color, and then at the center you change colors and you knit from the center to the other tip with another color. And I love how these colors were very, very similar, but you would get a little bit of variation on each side of the shawl. I really didn't want a high contrast one. I wanted one that was very similar in tone and color. So I thought these would be absolutely perfect. And I do believe in Claire's sample she uses the same color mohair and fingering in 2 different colors. So you have a complete change at the center. Mine's going to look even more soft because I'm using the same color mohair throughout. I'm just changing the sock color halfway through. So that will eventually get knit. I know I'm not really much of a shawl knitter. I do love to have something warm and cozy around my neck though, and this past winter we had quite a cold winter, and I really missed having something warm that I could wrap around my neck and my shoulders, especially something that I could keep on at work that would just make me feel extra cozy. So I definitely want to have something like that to wear. The only shells that I have right now are ones that I knit years and years ago, and I don't love them as much as I did when I finished them. I think I would much rather prefer something like this that is colorful but kind of neutral. Like these just remind me almost of like fresh fallen snow or something like that. They're very soft, very pastel. And I think that would go with a lot of my wardrobe, particularly a lot of my hand knitted wardrobe. I do have quite a few soft pastel sweaters now, but I do also think these would be neutral enough to go with more of my like autumny colored ones. I do not see myself being able to do this in the fall. I hopefully will get to work on this in the winter, and this might become one of my winter knitting plans, but jury's still out. It might take me a while to get working on this. So no promises as to when it's going to be done or when it's even going to be started, but that is my plan for this beautiful Stash Spotlight yarn. Now for a couple book reviews, and for the first time in a while, I have physical books to show you. The first book review that I have is for You've Reached Sam, which I picked up from my favorite local used bookstore. If you are in the Halifax, Nova Scotia area, it is Dartmouth Book Exchange. It's quite a drive for me, but it's so worth it. It is the best used bookstore experience that I've ever had other than Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon. And I live really far from Portland, Oregon. So I am not at Powell's very often. I've been once, and it was a magical experience. Well, I was in Portland once. I went to Powell's twice on that trip because I loved it so much the first time that I went back another day during my trip. But Dartmouth Book Exchange gives me Powell's vibes, but on a much smaller scale. Dartmouth Book Exchange is quite a small store. But I recently picked up You've Reached Sam on that visit to Dartmouth Book Exchange, and I have to tell you, I loved this book. This is one of those books that even though you know the ending, you still love the journey of getting to the ending. So I'm not spoiling anything by saying, in this story, Sam and Julie are a couple, and Sam passes away unexpectedly, and Julie is having a hard time dealing with his grief. And one of the things that she does to sort of give herself a little bit of a reprieve or just cheer herself up a little bit is she calls his phone number in order to hear his voicemail message. But instead of his voicemail message, Sam picks up the phone. Sam is gone. Sam has passed away, and he picks up the phone. It's got magic to it. It's got that little bit of something you just can't explain, and it's just a beautiful story. It's just something that really touched me. I really felt drawn into this story. I've read other people's reviews of this online saying that they really struggled to like Julie as a character. I do have to admit, she's not the most likable character, but I really understood her. I really felt for her, and I could understand why she acted the way that she did. And I just thought this was such a beautiful story. It's a YA fiction book. It's only about 300 pages. It didn't take me very long to read it. I actually read this one while we were camping last weekend, and I am very excited to read more from this author. I think all of his books include some form of magical realism where it's the normal everyday world, but there's something that happens in the books that you just can't explain, and it's just whimsical and magical in that sense. So I really loved this book. I thought it dealt really well with grief. I thought it was very respectful of Julie's grieving process, and it was just really well written. I really love how Julie was able to process her grief and how she got to a better point in her life. She still had challenges that came up every now and again, quite a lot of challenges, and it was just beautiful to see her grow as a character. And it made sense how the magical element had to eventually end, because she can't keep speaking to him forever. That ends at some point. And I really felt that it was well done how it ended. So I really liked that. And I really loved this book. I thought it was really, really beautiful. So I recommend this book. Now, the other book that I want to talk about, I haven't finished reading yet. I am just over halfway through it, but I'm currently reading Expiration Dates by Rebecca Searle. And I have read another one of Rebecca's books before. She wrote a book called In 5 Years, which I thought was such a clever book. And I remember reading that book, and the opening scene takes place in the present moment. And then after the first chapter, you go back 5 years and you see everything that happened leading up to that scene. And then you get that exact same scene in the last chapter of the book. And you realize, oh, what you thought that scene was when you read it at the beginning of the book is so different than what it is at the end of the book, even though that chapter is the exact same chapter. You just have a completely different understanding of the situation and the characters the second time you read it at the end of the book. And I thought that was just brilliant story writing. And it was another one of those, something like You've Reached Sam, where it is normal contemporary romance, but there's an element of magic to it. And that's what Expiration Dates is. And I think that's why I was drawn to this book after reading You've Reached Sam. Also, this happened to come in for me from the library. That's my bookmark tassel swishing around there. But in this book, the main character, Daphne, gets little pieces of paper every time she meets a man, and those papers tell her how long she's going to be with those men. And the story starts off with she gets a piece of paper with a name, but no amount of time. So she hypothesizes that this means this is her soulmate and this is going to be her forever person. So she's already meeting the person that has the forever timestamp, but then it keeps going back every chapter or so and telling you about some of her previous ones that were short term or even just her set term, I should say, relationships. So one of the people that was a set relationship that she had is now also her best friend. And he's the only one who knows about the papers. So it's nice that she does have somebody in her life that she can talk to about this. But it's great to see her experiencing this new relationship. And it really is the budding start to a relationship mixed in with these snapshots of the past. And you really get a feel for Daphne as a character and as a romantic person. And I'm really into it. So I know from reading one of Rebecca's other books that there's going to be something in this book coming up that's going to turn everything on its head, and I'm going to see everything in a different light. So I haven't reached that point in the book yet, but I'm really excited about that coming up. And it's just a nice, relaxing read. I read this a bit when I was away with my mom this past weekend, and for now it's probably just going to be my evening reading before I go to bed, but it's not going to take me very long. It's a pretty easy read, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to really like this, and I'm looking forward to reading more of Rebecca's books in the future. So that's all I had to show you today for my finished object, my whips, my stash spotlight, and my book reviews. So now I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about a topic that I have seen come up in the knitting YouTube community and sort of share my 2 cents on the topic. If you haven't seen it yet, Bash Harry did a video on whether or not knitting podcasts are dead. And that video was sparked by Laura Penrose sharing a video saying that she's no longer going to be doing knitting podcasts. She's going to switch over to doing knitting vlogs. And amongst that happening, there's also been some knitting creators that I have seen either drastically reduce the amount of podcasting that they're doing, give up entirely. Well, I shouldn't say give up. They have stopped sharing entirely, or they have mentioned that they're taking a step back. I have noticed that there's a lot of knitting podcasters that were much more active in the pandemic years or shortly after the pandemic years, and now they've taken a step back because they have had life events happen. I know a few that have had babies. I know a couple that are going back to school, and I can totally understand why knitting podcasting has taken a back seat. And I absolutely commend those podcasters for taking the time for themselves, for those life events, for those changes in their lifestyle and their day-to-day that makes knitting podcasting significantly more challenging, or just something that they don't have time to do anymore, or that they have chosen not to continue doing. I just wanted to sort of chat about that with you all and see where you are feeling, see what you're feeling as viewers of my knitting podcast. I do want to start off by saying I'm not intending to go anywhere. I'm not intending to stop doing my knitting podcast. I personally love knitting podcasts. I love watching them. I love making them. I get a lot of joy out of doing them. But there is a little bit of a dip in viewership. And I'm not saying that the only reason to do a knitting podcast is for viewership. Not at all. The reason I started doing my knitting podcast was to have a connection to the community, and it was to share my experiences as a plus-size knitter, because I really didn't see many people out there who were plus-size, who were sharing what they were knitting and what they were making. I know there are some wonderful ones out there, but we still are a bit of a minority. So I really wanted to take up space in that corner of the internet and provide my knitting podcast where I could talk about my feelings and share what I'm working on and that type of thing. So it's definitely something that brings me a lot of joy, and I don't intend to stop doing it. That being said, I do kind of want to talk about why I do see a bit of a decline of knitting podcasts and why I kind of hypothesize we might not be seeing as many anymore. So I did first mention that a lot of the ones that I used to watch now have big life events happening that have taken them away from the podcasting space. I do also believe that burnout is definitely a contender for why some people have stopped doing knitting podcasts. I myself have always told myself I will only do YouTube as long as it is fun for me. It is still very fun for me. I am still very much enjoying it. I stopped doing Vlogmas because Vlogmas was not fun for me, so I do not do Vlogmas anymore. I did it 2 years in a row. I found it completely exhausting. I was completely burned out in January, and I honestly did not enjoy making vlogs. It's not a type of content that I like to make. I find it very challenging. I find it you feel very on all the time to try and find those aesthetic clips of your day-to-day life that you could insert into a video. I'm one of those people that I think the people who do the best vlogs are people who do YouTube full-time, or people who do not have a 9-to-5 day job that limits when they can film to outside of that 9-to-5 timeline. So vlogging has never been something that has appealed to me. And to be honest, I don't enjoy watching vlogs. So that's not a type of content that I really take in very much. I was having a great conversation about this with one of my fellow Canadian podcasting friends, Allie of Allie Makes Everything. And we were both talking about how we love that knitting podcasts give you a sense of community, albeit virtually, where you don't necessarily need to watch it the whole time. You can be working on your own knitting projects while watching a knitting podcast. And I'm willing to bet a lot of you who are watching this right now probably have a project on the go right now, either knitting or crochet or any other type of craft. So both of us really enjoy that aspect of knitting podcasts. And something that I particularly enjoy is that watching a knitting podcast feels like I'm sitting down with one of my friends and they're catching me up on the projects that they've been working on. So it kind of simulates being on a knitting date with one of your friends and hearing about the projects that they're working on. And they happen to have brought them all and they're showing you all of them and you get to see them. And it's just really great to have that bit of community that way. And I myself get a lot of inspiration from watching knitting podcasts. Now, that being said, I absolutely appreciate the fact that there are some podcasts out there that are very repetitive. There are people out there who knit patterns by the same designer, or there are podcasts that are all separate podcasts, all knitting the same pattern because it's the popular pattern at the time. I have to be honest, I kind of fell into that a little bit. I did the Lento. I didn't realize at the time that the Lento was such a popular pattern, but it's a pattern that I absolutely love. I've knit more than once, and I definitely will knit more of in the future. but I didn't realize that I was hopping on that train at the time. I just thought it was a great pattern. I was introduced to it by Rebecca Clow, I believe, is who introduced me to that pattern, because she did a Lento knit along at one point 2 years ago, maybe 3. But I can understand how, as a viewer, when you see a thumbnail pop up or you see a new knitting podcast come up and you see the description and it lists the patterns that the person's going to be talking about, how if you're not interested in those patterns, you might not want to watch the video. And that's completely understandable and completely okay. I'm doing this for me. I hope that you get joy out of it too, but I can understand why you wouldn't want to watch my video if you're not interested in the patterns that I'm making. I myself have found most of my enjoyment from smaller knitting podcasters. I mentioned my friend Emily of Emily Knits. She's one of my more recent findings of knitting podcasts, and she's now the one that as soon as she has a video, I watch it immediately. She's the first one that I put on my list, because Emily is somebody that I always find new to me patterns from watching her videos. We are both people who enjoy doing relatively small designer patterns. That being said, I've made a Lento. She's working on a petite knit pattern right now. So we're not exclusively small knitting designer pattern enthusiasts, but we both tend to pick patterns that the other has not heard of and that the general viewing public of our videos might not have heard of either. And that's what I really enjoy when it comes to knitting podcasts, is the joy of the discovery of something new that I don't know about yet. I'm not a fan of the really popular knitting podcasts that tend to knit the same patterns over and over again, or at least from certain designers. I'm probably going to upset people by saying this, but if somebody talks exclusively about petite knit, I don't watch their podcast, because that's not interesting to me. That's not something that appeals to me. It might appeal to some of you viewers. That's totally okay. Everyone has their own opinions and their own tastes, and everyone is very welcome to find the content that matches their tastes. That's the great thing about the internet and about YouTube, is that you're always going to find something that appeals to you. I was having a great conversation with my husband just before I filmed my podcast, talking about how if you can find 5 people who like your content, you can find 10 people. And if you can find 10 people, you can find 100 people. And how it is statistically impossible to not find viewers for your content. And on the flip side, it's statistically impossible to not find content that matches your tastes. And I thought that was a really great conversation. He learned it from another YouTube video. And if I can find it, or he can find it, I'll put it down in my description box below. But it was just talking about how content creation and content consumption these days, there's really something for everybody. And that's the beauty of it. So if you are not enjoying the content that you're watching, maybe something that really appeals to you is just on the horizon. It's going to be the next video that you find or something like that. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents to the whole knitting podcast is dead conversation, because I don't think it's dead. I do think some of the big name creators are very publicly stepping back or very publicly taking breaks, and it can look like the knitting podcast is dying, or in some cases, like Laura Penrose, switching from doing knitting podcasts to knitting vlogs. But I don't feel that knitting podcasts in general are dying. I think they're now being made by smaller creators who don't necessarily get pushed by the algorithm. So I've always been a proponent of trying out new knitting podcasts, and I do love it when people that I love to watch share their favorite knitting podcasts. I've never done my own list of my top favorite knitting podcasts, because to be honest, my taste changes quite a lot. Like I said, I'm watching my friend Emily pretty exclusively. I love my friend Chelsea of Knitting Tipsy, although she hasn't had a video out in a little while. Totally okay. We are not machines. We can't just produce something every single week. I'm trying to do that in September, and so you're seeing a video almost every week so far. Ali Makes Everything, a fellow Canadian creator. So there really is something out there for everybody. Maybe some of the bigger names who are the ones that get seen the most are saying knitting podcasts are dead, or they don't like knitting podcasts, or maybe you're just seeing that a lot of the bigger names are no longer making knitting podcasts and they're switching to a different thing. But I think if you still want to watch knitting podcasts, if you're a big fan of them like I am, I want you to do something for me in the comments. I want you to list some of your favorite knitting podcasts, as many as you want to, and hopefully we can all discover some new people, because I feel like the algorithm pushes certain things. They push certain types of creators, and it can be harder to find those niche people. And I feel like the most exciting things are found in the niches. Knitting podcasts are already a niche piece of content, so you might need to dig a little deeper to find the ones that really work for you. So with that being said, thank you so much for sticking it out till the end of this video. I hope you didn't mind this little bit of extra chat at the end. I just really wanted to add my comments to the conversation and just add my little 2 cents to the whole "Are knitting podcasts dead?" conversation, because I am a knitting podcast creator and I'm also a knitting podcast consumer. So I just had thoughts that I wanted to share with all of you. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. It really means a lot to me, especially in this conversation of people not watching knitting podcasts. It really means the world to me that I have new and returning viewers here all the time. And it just warms my heart so, so, so very much. While you're here, it would help my channel if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and please leave me a comment below. I really want to see who you enjoy watching, and share, especially smaller creators. Anyone that you are interested in, leave it in the comments below. Let's have a great conversation in the comments, and I hope anyone reading the comments can get some inspiration on who they can start watching. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I do have a couple of affiliate links as well as my Ravelry wishlist linked below if you would like to support my channel in any of those ways, but there's never any pressure to do so, only if you would like to. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you all take care and happy knitting!